afternoon's Goldwater Open House. Today is one of our topical sessions, and it's going to be led by Babs Wise. And there are lots of questions about how to deal with letter writers, and Babs is going to lead a discussion today on how to successfully do that. And we have, I think, all of our consultants here today who will be available to add comments, and we'll be looking for your questions, either in the chat or bring them up as you think of them. So with that, Babs, why don't you start this week's open house?
All right, hang on just a second. Let me get this going. And hi, I'm Babs Wise, and I am working to see if I can get my screenshot to show y'all the slides. I am retired from Duke University. Are y'all there? Yeah. I am retired from Duke University, where I was a fellowship advisor for about 20 years and worked with, I'm sorry, my share is not working very well. Hang on. Worked for about 20 years with both reference letters and advisors. Are y'all seeing my desktop? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
There, got it.
Yep.
Got it. All right. Sorry. I used to have an assistant who did this for me and who managed it for me. Anyway, so I'm Babs Wise. I've been I'm retired from Duke University as a fellowship advisor. I've read reference letters for all of those 20 years, both working with students as they applied to Duke for merit scholarships. And then I have served on a number of selection committees there for various things. And I continue as an outside reviewer for the SAMVID scholarship and some others. So anyway, I really enjoy working with students and reference letters. And so today is about how you as a CR can work with your students and the referees to get the best possible letters for the Goldwater application. So we're going to talk about your role in the process, a little bit about working with students and working with referees. And then this last one, which I think is the hardest one, is what do you do if you get a lousy letter? Okay, because that happens in all of our lives. So your role as a CR is to really work with the whole application and pull this together. The first thing you have to do, of course, is to read the Goldwater website. Okay, there's tons and tons of information about reference letters there that can help you. Your most important job is to lead these students in getting references, and I call it educating them. I think this is a time when we, whether we're fellowship advisors or faculty, it's an important education process. And then with the Goldwater, you actually will be requesting the letters from the referees, and so you have a role there. And then posting them online, okay? And then there's an optional little job that you can do, which helps with the reference letters and helps make them better, I think, is that you can, in your CR statement, contextualize what is being said in these letters, okay? So first, let's talk about working with students. Again, I think it's really, really, really important that you think about this as an education process. Your students are young, you know, they're some of them will be sophomores. They've probably never actually asked for an academic letter of this type in their lives, okay? And so it's a pretty scary thing. And I think for some students, approaching faculty is really hard. So you need to help them figure out how to do that. You also have to help them think about, of the faculty that they're working with, who are the best faculty to make those recommendations. And then, how do they walk into that office and ask for the letter? That seems pretty important. And the last thing I put on here is the importance of gratitude, because the students will be asking for letters from sophomore year all the way through their academic careers. They're going to be asking for these. And then again, when they get a job, you're going to still need references. So I think learning about gratitude is really, really, really important as a life skill for them. So how do they go about choosing faculty? Okay. The way I always told my students was to first look for a research mentor. Okay. You get 3 with the Goldwater. And so what I would do is say, your research mentor is mandatory. Okay. You really need this person to back you up. If there is a busy PI that the student works with and is their research mentor, at Duke, I ran into this quite a bit, and the students actually were working with the grad student. And so you can say, hey, look, get that grad student to write the letter and co-sign it with the PI of the group. That way, you get someone who really knows you and can help write an informative letter, but you still get the PI backing you. And then I say someone who has taught the student. And this is in the sciences, folks. Okay. Try and find someone that has taught them, an aligned course perhaps, but who the student wants to see at least one office hour. Okay. You need them to know these students a little bit. And then someone who knows their heart for research. Who does this student know that he's talked to as a faculty member, or, could be the science dean? Who have they talked to about how important research is to them? Now, these could all be faculty members. They could all be research mentors. They can be past research mentors or whatever. But to kind of think about it in these 3 categories will really help the student begin to identify who they should ask. Then, approaching faculty, I think for sophomores is particularly difficult. They haven't been there long. They've probably been in big courses, big lecture courses, and it's hard. But the first thing I do is say, hey guys, faculty expect that writing a letter is part of their job. This is what faculty are expected to do. Now, you have to be nice about it when you ask them, but, they do want to do that. I also remind students that the faculty member has the right to say no. And if someone says no, just to move on and get somebody else. So this is detailed, I think, on the website pretty well, but let's talk about it again. To go to the faculty member, the first thing they need to do is to write a polite email and ask for time to talk about the scholarship and the reference letter. In that email, I always told my students they should attach a resume. Something, if they wrote a paper for that faculty member, if they can attach that helps the faculty maybe figure out who this kid was, or think about their original thoughts, or whatever it is. And then give them some dates. Tell them when they actually work together, when the student and the faculty were together. And then very importantly, we want them to talk about what the Goldwater is. Okay. And what is important to the Goldwater, and that's all over the website. So, see if you can get them to identify that to you, and then have them send that to the faculty member. They should also list the deadline for the faculty member. And then, pardon? Did I hear a question? Okay. In the meeting, when the student finally gets together with a faculty member, the student should talk about what they really think this faculty member can speak to. What are the things, maybe it's, that idea I came up with in your class about so-and-so. Is there a way you can talk about that? Or I really need you to be my research mentor on this, or talk about how I operate in class. Any of those kinds of things that the student can help the faculty member start to pull together the letter. It's very important that you teach your students that they should never draft the letter. That is the job of the faculty member. And if you're a member of the National Association of Fellowship Advisors, having the student write the letter is totally against the ethics code. And so it's very important that you think about that. I told this story to Bert and John at one point, that I received a letter one time written by my brother. And I got the letter, and it was for a student applying for the Rhodes that he had worked with. And the student had written the letter. Okay. And I had to call my brother up and yell at him for doing that and get it fixed. So it's really important that you kind of let the student know that from the beginning. Faculty will write a much better letter than that student can write. The student cannot do any comparisons. They can't do any of the things that need to be done in the letter. Okay. And then teach them about thank you notes. I think many students don't know that art. I was always very pleased when I did find students who understood that a handwritten thank you note is really, and slipped under the faculty member's door, goes a long way. It really goes a long way. Some students will take will be able to take them to coffee somewhere or something like that. It doesn't have to be big. And then Goldwater allows students to mention the people that are important to them on their application, who were their mentors. I think this is a really nice way for students to show gratitude. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? Bert, you're monitoring the chat. Okay. All right. So your job working with the referees, what are you supposed to do in relation to the referees? The best letters come from well-informed referees. Okay. So you need to really help them understand the Goldwater. One of the things that I found was really important was to set a timeline, and this is what I used. I always, by November 15th, I tried to have a solid list of who the candidates' letter writers were going to be and what their relationship was to the student, so that I could kind of go over that and think about it and make sure that these were folks that I thought would follow through and do nice letters. Maybe you need, the student may have presented you with an English teacher, and you need to have time to go ahead and correct that and help them find someone else rather than an English teacher. And then by Thanksgiving, I think it's time to send the recommenders an email with all of the campus details. Goldwater has a sample letter that I believe when you click on the name on your dashboard, when you click on that faculty member's name, it'll pre-populate a letter. Review that letter carefully, make sure it makes sense with your campus, so that, you may have to change some details or whatever, and make sure that it has your deadlines in it, not the Goldwater final deadlines. And then in early January, set a campus deadline, early January. That way you can have the letters in your hands, know what is being said. It'll help you write your description, your letter. And it will allow you to see if maybe the letters aren't hitting quite the right note. Okay. So I really think that's a big step. If you have a good schedule, then folks can work to it. And usually if they get it by Thanksgiving, they should have plenty of time to get it to you by early January. So when you look over the referees, again, you want to see who these folks are. Are there faculty who write those very short notes? Physics, math, you guys, longer letters, please. I think a good letter usually runs a page and a half to 2 pages, no more. But it needs to be full of detail. Okay. Is there a graduate student in their list? Is there a way they can co-write with a PI? And then again, are all the letter writers in the sciences? Okay. So the students.
Babs, we have a question in the chat. Can I?
Sure.
So it says, what if the student wants to use a faculty mentor not in the sciences who has helped them with research in the humanities field?
It's possible that will work. If they know research, I'll let some of you reviewers, if you want to say anything to that. I don't review y'all, any of the reviewers want to chime in on that one?
I think that as long as the letter addresses creativity, interactions, sort of research about the background of the project, it doesn't really matter if it's humanities or hard sciences, particularly for 1 out of 3.
Okay.
But it is critical that this letter writer address all these factors, so we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
I agree with Julio. And that said, I don't think I've ever seen such a letter. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It's not common. But if I were looking at such a letter, I would want to know a little bit more than just it was research in the humanities. I'd like to know, to what extent is it, predictive of interest and ability in possible science research. It's a little tricky, I know, but it's pretty rare in my experience.
And I think I'd say I'd still want to see a letter from a research mentor in a STEM field, particularly the mentor for the essay that the student's writing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't mean to use that one instead, but I think it's a useful letter for me as a reviewer, if it comes accompanied with a letter from a mentor.
So I think to sum in a lot of ways, what this humanities research professor can really speak to is the student's heart for research. Okay. And so then that becomes we talked about 3 different kinds of letter writers, the PI. So that's the science PI, but this person, and then a faculty member who's taught them, and then someone who knows their heart for research. So this one could fall into that category, is the way I would look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree that there has to be an essay by the student, the research essay about science research. And there has to be a science research mentor who writes a letter. a person in the humanities can write an effective letter if they talk about the student understands the process of research, from generating ideas to, doing the work, to communicating results to the community. That can be helpful, but this would have to be in addition to something from the sciences. We have a comment from Belinda that says, try to gauge your own campus's committee sentiments on non-STEM letters. At my university, the committee only wants STEM evaluators.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for
So-
that, Belinda.
All right. Your job as a referee is to follow up, as the CR is to follow up with the referees. And so again, you can use the pre-written letter, or you can write your own. And sometimes it depended on the student and the faculty member, whether I wrote my own or whether I just cut and pasted what was already written for me by Goldwater. And so I would go through and talk about what a good letter contains in my note, so that you can remind them of that. And then, what Goldwater is, how it's important. And, something that they really, after a while, got used to, after faculty got used to me, was an offer to review the letter for them before it became the final letter. That helped me make sure there were all, really solid letters. And if they ask for advice, you can really give it. It's a lot easier to give if they've asked for it. Okay. And so in order to, really make this happen, you need to define the good letter. You need to give them plenty of notice of when that's due. And one thing, faculty always find out when the final deadline is for the Goldwater, and they want to write their letter and turn it in that day. No, you got to keep on them. You got to remind them. You got to have an earlier deadline, because if you get it that morning, there's nothing you can do. You just got to put it on there and hope for the best. And then, of course, once you have the letter, thank them for doing it for the student. And so from all of my reading of reference letters, what I think is most important about a good letter is detail. Okay. I think you really want to know that the letter writer knows the person, but you really, they need detail. Okay. Not a whole lot of fluff. Okay. But who is the student, and, how do you know them? Whatever. So you want their contributions to class. If this student always, spoke out in class, and really had interesting ideas that carried a conversation along, that's an important thing that they can note. Are there any attributes that the student has that the faculty member knows sort of means they're going to be interested in research, right? And that the faculty member has a real sense that this is a researcher at heart. We do want the context of the writer's relationship to the student. So how long have they known them? Have they taught them? Have they been in their lab? How do they know them? A comparison of that student to other successful students they have worked with. That's one thing I've learned from these reviewers here, that they really like the comparison. This student is like so-and-so who has gone on to do a PhD or is deeply involved in such and such. Okay. So it can be really helpful to do a comparison. And then also, I think a brief statement about what's the availability from their perspective of research for this student on campus, because that does vary a lot from campus to campus. What's available to the student, and how much advantage are they taking of what's available? Okay. So good letter, details. Okay. And then your easiest job is to actually post the letters. Okay. You know, one of the big mistakes I have made in the past was to post the not final letter. It wasn't on Goldwater, but I had a president's reference letter, and he sent one in one day and one in 5 days later, and I posted the original one to the scholarship website and had to call the scholarship up and say, could you send that letter back? You know, yeah. So double check the dates that you got it and make sure that you're using the last one. Then also follow the directions on the Scholarship America on the Goldwater website. They're pretty detailed. It's easy to do, but sometimes you know, in the middle of all the deadlines that are happening at the end of January, you get muddled. Call Scholarship America. They will help you make sure that it gets posted correctly. Okay. Lousy letters. Okay. I don't know what else to call them, but you know, those letters that just aren't right. What do you do about them, and what do they look like? So, for me, you know, the characteristics are where they sort of damn the student with faint praise. I'm sure you can all think of an example, and of course, my mind has just gone blank. Um, but you know, oh, the student attended class every week, and you know, and they participated. You know, or came to class on time. A letter that doesn't have any specifics about the student and what they did. Again, you know, came to class on time, got an A, whatever. Um, and then the thing that used to kill me was a long, long paragraph about the letter writer's own research and nothing about what the student is contributing to this project. You know, I I have seen, you know, 100-word paragraphs and more about, you know, these are the papers I've written, these are the things I've done, and that doesn't help anybody much. You know, if the Goldwater reviewers are really worried about the status of this professor, I'm sure they can Google them if they really are curious. A little bit about who they are, but not a really long paragraph. It should be about the student. And then any kind of bias that a student, you know, so they're the biases against gender, race, any of those kinds of things that sort of words, again, it's sort of damning with faint praise in a way, where, you know, women are talked about as being neat and other thing, you know, their work is always neat and they always bring a smile to the situation. That's not really all that helpful. Okay.
Babs, we have another question.
Okay.
So it says, how important are the letters of reference when you are reviewing applications? So that we will have the reviewers answer some of those. And then
Yeah.
it says, for instance, if the student has a fantastic application, but so-so letters, will that student go on in the process?
Reviewers.
I'll take the first shot at it.
Okay.
Letters of reference are important, very important. If you can't get, you know, at least one really strong letter that says what this student has done in research is amazing, and this is why, and this is what they've contributed, and this is what they've done. If you can't get some outside support for that student, then it makes it difficult for the reviewer to choose that as one of the Goldwater scholars. You know, we're going to be reading, you know, say 20 or 30 files, let's say 20, and we get to choose from those 20, 6 or maybe 7 scholars. Well, if they have a really strong application, but the letters of reference are not good, there's going to be 6 or 7, 8 or 9 other students who have a strong file and they've got really strong letters of reference. So it's going to be really difficult to choose someone who doesn't have strong letters. That's what I would say. Now I'll let the other referees or reviewers comment.
Paul?
I was, wait, which Paul? I was just gonna say I'll second what Bert says. I mean, in my mind, poor letters can break an application. It's the primary way that the reviewers get to know the applicants through someone else's eyes. There are no interviews associated with this, with the Goldwater process, and so we don't get to see who the student is unless it is through a letter. And so that's why, Babs, you were mentioning details are important. I mean, have specific times. I mean, you came in at, if the letter writer came in at 2 a.m. and the person was still there working in the lab, trying to get it going. I mean, say that. And, examples like that really make it real for the reviewers.
Let me jump in here since I have a bit of a historical perspective. When I first became president, I would have reviewers come up to me and say, this student was doing really well until I got this letter, which was just a weak letter. And that we changed the process as a result. The pre-application was introduced to encourage the campus representatives to have a in-depth discussion with the student about letter writers. And the other thing that we changed is the letter writers used to be able to upload their letters directly to Goldwater. We got rid of that because we wanted the campus representatives to have an opportunity to review the letter. And if there was a problem, which there can be, as Babs has outlined, to have that discussion with the letter writer. So the letters are very important. And that's why we changed the system to bring the campus representative into the discussion, because you're dealing with students for whom this is probably their first national fellowship or scholarship competition. And they really don't know how to approach faculty, as Babs has been saying, and who might actually be a problematic letter writer. They would never know that, whereas campus representative may know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would add that, agreeing with what all of my colleagues have said already, that now and then I've read a very useful note from a campus rep as part of the application to the effect that, yes, this letter is not that great, but it was the bet we couldn't do better under the time circumstances, blah, 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 blah. So having some backup from the CR can be very helpful. There, in some cases, they're very eminent researchers who, it makes sense to get their name on the roster, but they're just unwilling to write a detailed letter. So, you can only do so much, but the CR can help us understand that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
I would also add the CR can also say, this letter is really strong from this individual. I've read letters from this person before. It doesn't sound, he says it, the student is quite strong. That's the highest praise this person ever gives. And so you can add that context as well. I want to add one more thing that John changed that I really liked. When I first started reviewing for Goldwater, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, we reviewed by state. And so I'd be reading letters from cell biology that I didn't really understand, or maybe some engineering stuff I didn't really understand. And it made it hard to know if that was really uh, effective research or a good letter. But now we review by discipline. So I'm only reading letters written by chemists, which I think I have a better understanding about that profile than I would have before. So I think that's another change that John made that has been very, very effective in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So I think when I think about letters, when I read for SAMVID, I tend to read reference letters first, just because that's who I am. I read the resume and then I go to that and then I go to what they say about themselves, because I believe a reference letter adds credence to what the student is saying about themselves. If it's not reflected in the reference letters, then a student can say anything, right? But get some backup is the way I look at it. Okay, so what can you do with a lousy letter? This is probably the stickiest part of a CR's job, or a fellowship advisor. What do you do? So again, check the letters on the pre-app or wherever. If someone's writes non-helpful letters all the time and you know it, I might query the student about, is there someone else who could help? Do they have a graduate student who could draft the letter and they could sign it together? Anything like that can be helpful. I would set an early date. Again, as I showed you the schedule that I used, set an early date. So if a letter does come in, say the faculty member forgot to change the gender in the letter, they're using the same letter they wrote for somebody else, and it's a woman that they're writing for, and they still have he throughout the letter. That's one of the things you can get fixed, okay? But if you have an early deadline, you can check on that. Again, busy PIs often have graduate students that these younger students are working with. They need practice writing letters, okay? And so, see if you can get them to co-write or write a draft of the letter. And we do see letters that are co-written. You might have the faculty member's name listed in the reference section, who it is, but they can co-write with someone else. I've also had PIs that say to the graduate student, well, you submit it. So it'd have the faculty member's name and the grad student's email, just so that grad student is the one that you contact if there's a problem. And then, again, define for the letter writer what Goldwater's looking for. That will really help, if they don't speak to the student's heart for research, or how they perform in research, you can go back to them and say, would you mind adding a sentence or two that would talk about this? And it really depends on how well you know the faculty that the letters are coming from. If you have a campus committee, it's possible that someone on that committee may know that faculty member and they can help you approach them. Sometimes I have reached out to deans to help me with that issue if it was really, really, really bad. Okay. And then if there's no changing the letter, if there's no changing, as several of the reviewers have said, use your comments to contextualize the letter, okay? Tell them, this guy writes a short letter or whatever, and, this is so great. So when you contextualize the letters, again, it's optional to write that statement, although I believe that it's actually not optional, but that was my approach. So, you can talk about the seniority of the faculty. You can talk about, you know, in this particular case, even though it sounds like he's not really saying something from this guy, that's something. That really helps, and then talk about the combination of the letters. What does this show you? You know, if you have all three of these letters together, what should the reviewers gather from that? I think that can be very helpful. Okay. So those are my basic ideas. There is coming up on November 19th a session during open house about reference letters for the authors of those letters. So if you know who your letter writers will be, share with them the link and invite them to come and learn about letters and what is expected from a Goldwater letter. So again, that's on November 19th. Questions,
Babs,
thoughts?
we have one more question.
Okay, well, I think
I
that's,
think this is for John, probably.
okay.
The question is, some other scholarships ask for three letters of recommendation, but if only 2 submit, they accept the application. I know that the CRs upload the letters, but if we only get 2 letters by the deadline, does Goldwater still accept the application? John?
Yes, we'll still accept it.
Okay. It's also a reason to have an early deadline. So you know if you're only going to get 2 letters, you have a chance, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, to pull in another letter. Okay.
But I would say as a reviewer, if you only see 2 letters, that makes you wonder, because you got other students that have 3 letters.
Mhm.
And so I think that disadvantages the students some, even though we do accept they do accept the application. I'm not sure it's as helpful as it would have been if there were 3 letters of reference.
Yeah, in that case too, I think it's really essential that the CR kind of backstop. If he or she can do so, honestly, that's fine. But obviously, if we're not in the business of penalizing young students for their elders, inactivity. So if that's a factor, it's fine. I want to know that from the CR. I'm not going to go out and tell anybody, but I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Let me add one thing, that the system as it now exists may not let you nominate the student if you don't have 3 things uploaded, the 2 letters that you're talking about. And then you may have to, and I need to check with Linda on this, to be honest with you. You
Yep.
may have to upload a blank letter of recommendation so that the system has a count of everything that it is expecting to see.
Yep, I was just turning on my camera and my audio to tell you that systematically it will not let you nominate unless you have those placeholders in there. So if you only get 2 letters, just upload a document saying I only got 2 letters or just something. Otherwise, it will not let you nominate that person.
And you'll be calling Linda saying, what's wrong?
Yeah, and don't wait till 5 p.m. on the last day of January.
So we have 4 more questions in a hurry.
All right.
First one, is it worth for the students to ID a 4th reference and then you pick the best 3, which is something I used to do when I was campus rep
I
back in the
found
early
that
2000s. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I found that got me into trouble sometimes. I would often ask for more letters, but then you have to go back often to the faculty member and say, we're not going to use your letter. With the Goldwater, it's not as big a deal because you actually select the letters that go in. But when that student wins the Goldwater and your campus is writing the write-up about the student and talks about their referees, and that one referee that you knocked out isn't there, it can be a problem. Anyway, I would not do that as a practice myself because I've gotten in trouble that way.
Okay, another question. You said that it is best to have grad students inform the PI and co-sign the letter. Is this viewed better than a solid letter that is written only by the PI? Or is this basically an alternative option that is better than a lukewarm letter from the PI?
I think it's an alternative. If the student knows the PI really, really, really well, and the PI has time and they know that they'll write a good letter, then you want the PI, very definitely you want the PI to write it. But if that PI is really busy and says, I don't really have time to write the letter, then that's when you go to a grad student.
Yeah, and I mean, I've only taught at liberal arts colleges, so we never had grad students. So I never had to worry about that issue. But I think Babs is absolutely correct. The next question is, for the campus process, we let students be considered by the committee if they have only 2 letters, and then help ensure that the 3rd letter comes in for the final submission. So this is when you have the campus committee making a decision. So I never had that. I never had a campus committee. Babs has, so
Yeah.
she can comment on that.
Thanks for the question, Belinda. And it's good to see you here. But when we did our campus process, which was done in early November, I only asked for a brief email from the PI as sort of the credence letter, and then would get the other letters later. So I think, you do need to ensure that you're going to get that 3rd letter. But in general, I wouldn't worry about it at the campus process level. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it was a comment more than a question.
Okay, all right, good.
Let me add a quick comment. In this process, where you're, as a campus representative, talking with a student about appropriate letter writers for them, once you come to an agreement with the student on who the letter writers for that student should be, it's the student's responsibility to go to the faculty member and ask them for a letter and get them to agree or not agree to write a letter. In Babs's presentation, she talked about reaching out to the letter writers. That's after the student has confirmed with the letter writers that indeed they will write a letter. And then Babs comes along later and talks about what that letter needs to be.
We have another question. This is probably mainly for John. Did you say that instead of a Q&A on November 19th, it will be a session for recommenders?
Yes, on the 19th, I think Babs, I don't know if you want to bring that slide back up, but this is for your campus letter writers. Now, they may be letter writers who are involved in writing a letter this year for a student, or if you have a letter writer who kind of routinely writes for Goldwater applications, you might want to bring that letter writer into this November 19th session. So again, it's intended to be for the individuals who are going to be writing letters for students. And my point being is that they can either be for this cycle, or if you have somebody who writes letters pretty routinely for the Goldwater cycle, you might want to have make those letter writers aware of this opportunity.
Other questions?
There's a question that asks, will that session be recorded?
Yes, I imagine so.
Yes.
Does anyone have any advice for other folks that's different from mine? You know, the thing that I have found as a fellowship advisor is that the input of other fellowship advisors is critical to my learning, and I don't know everything. So if there's anyone who has any advice that would you'd like to share, please join in now.
One thought here is that at some institutions, including the one that I taught at for many years, there's a fairly rigorous process of permissions. That is, a student needs to, if a student came to me and said, I want you to write a letter for something, I need to have, as a faculty member, I need to have authorization from the student that I can actually write this letter. I guess I could write it, but that I can share it with the outside world. So these students, especially sophomores, may not have much experience with this sort of thing. So they might need to be reminded that the faculty need to be, as it were, protected in privacy situations. So they will need to figure out what they need to do at their institution. It's not a total triviality at St. Olaf. In any case, there was a separate process for letters of recommendation for a particular thing, as opposed to letters of recommendation sort of for anything for 6 months or whatever. But they need to work that out.
Yeah. We used in our office, we had the word is a disclaimer or something that they signed that said that they could never see the letters and that we had the right to use them. Different campuses, as you say, though, do very different. A release is what I'm trying to think of. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have a waiver form that students complete early in the process when they're interested in a wide range of fellowships. And that waiver form, addressed to like confidentiality, but also gives us permission to check for good academic and good conduct standing. So we tell them that we will check those things before we nominate them for any award, and it stays in effect, I think, as long as the student is enrolled, and it was vetted by our university council.
Yeah.
Well, Belinda, while you're talking, do you want to add your other question, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, it was just whether that recording of the session for recommenders will be only available to CRs, or is it going to be posted publicly?
We have been posting at least some of these to the Goldwater webpage. And so that's it. It will be a public post.
Okay. So is there anything to prevent students from attending that particular webinar, since you're going to post it publicly subsequently?
I don't know that it'd be helpful for them necessarily, for the students, but if they have the link from you, then they could attend. It's you control that link.
Oh, I'm not giving them the link.
But we do have a student session coming up
Mhm.
on November 5th.
It's also in November. That's correct.
Yes.
There's
November.
a separate Zoom link for that session. Or I should say a different Zoom link than the one you're using today.
All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody's kind attention and questions. At any time, if anyone needs to reach out or has questions that I can help with, please email me. I know all the other folks are also up for talking to the whoever is interested in and has a question for one of us. We really want to help you. That's what this consulting is all about, is helping you guys get winners on your campus.
If you want to link our consultants to faculty on your campus, they are available to do that, for example.
Mhm. And John has all of our email addresses if you don't have them.
Well, thank you again for coming today, and hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday at the open house.